Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Breakdown. Today we're going to be breaking down the Aqua Control Zero series of pads, one of the most control-focused pads in the Aqua Control lineup. Now the Zero series, similar to the recently released AC Ace, is a very control-oriented pad optimized for low time-to-kill games like Valorant, Counter-Strike, and Rainbow Six Siege. However, it can also be used for other aim and game types that benefit from a slower, more control-focused glide. Now while on paper, the Zero looks very similar to the other pads in the AC series, what differentiates it is its unique surface weaving, which gives the Zero series pads their balanced controlled performance profiles. So in today's episode of Breakdown, we're going to break down all the unique features of the AC Zero pads, and we'll talk in depth all about the mousepad's performance profiles, base performance, skate compatibility, what games and aim types the Zero is best suited for, and much more. But before we dive in, if you enjoy the video and want to see more episodes of Breakdown, breaking down X-Raypad's other pad lineups and products, be sure to leave a like on this video and get subscribed to the channel. And if you want to learn more about the AC Zero series of pads or pick one up for yourself, you can check out the product links down in the video description. For pricing and versions, the AC Zero is available in 5 colorways: plain black, black gray, orange, pink, and purple. These colorways are available in 4 sizes: 360 by 300 by 4 millimeters, 450 by 400 by 4 millimeters, 500 by 500 by 4 millimeters, and 900 by 400 by 4 millimeters. These standard versions of the Zero retail between $23.90 and $43.90 USD, depending on the size you purchase. And as expected for a mousepad in the Aqua Control series, the AC Zero series also supports custom printing, which for a slight fee you can fully customize the pad's art with your own design, creating your own one-of-one version of an Aqua Control Zero. Now these custom versions of the Zero are available in 8 sizes: 340 by 280 by 4 millimeters, 360 by 400 by 4 millimeters, 450 by 400 by 4 millimeters, 500 by 500 by 4 millimeters, 600 by 400 by 4 millimeters, 900 by 400 by 4 millimeters, 1000 by 500 by 4 millimeters, and 1200 by 550 by 4 millimeters. Now these custom print versions of the Aqua Control Zero, as mentioned earlier, retail for a little more, retailing between $19.90 and $89.90 USD depending on the size you purchase. But as always with X-Raypad products, if you purchase them directly from our website, the product will be available at a discounted price. However, if you purchase the pad from a third-party retailer, you'll be paying the full MSRP. And don't forget that you can use code BREAKDOWN when purchasing any of X-Raypad's products on our website to save even more off your orders. For unboxing, both the standard and custom print versions of the Aqua Control Zero series come in rectangular packagings, similar to the packaging used for the AC Plus and AC Plus V2 series of pads, but uniquely if you purchase the standard version of the Aqua Control Zero, the coloring of the box will match the colorway of the pad you purchase. Opening this rectangular packaging, we'll find the Zero, which is wrapped in a protective plastic wrapper, which once removed you can unroll the pad and place it face up on your desk. Now as we've seen with other X-ray pads that use this style of packaging, sometimes the pad will not sit completely flat out of the box, and this depends on how long it has been rolled inside, as the rubber can crease in some cases, causing the edges of the pad to fold upwards. If this happens to your pad, it's very important that you do not reverse roll the pad to flatten it, as doing so can crease or warp the surface layer, permanently damaging the pad. Instead, it's best to simply put something heavy on top of the pad for a day or so to flatten it out, and you can use a stack of books or a large heavy box or something similar to do this. And since the pad cannot be reverse rolled, if you do need to repackage the AC Zero for storage or transport, be sure to roll the pad with the base facing inward and the surface outward, and we also recommend holding onto the Zero's packaging, as you can use it to safely store and transport the pad if needed. Now for surfacing, the Zero series, just like all the other pads in the Aqua Control series, uses non-coated amundsen fabric for its surface material. However, unlike the other AC series pads, the weaving of said fabric here on the Zero is quite unique, as not only is the weaving more randomized than we've seen before, the weaving is also taller with more ridges or bumps in the surface, creating more friction points, which increases the amount of control you'll feel when gliding your mouse across the Zero's surface, giving the Zero that balanced controlled performance profile. But while this unique surfacing does improve the pad's control, it does make the Zero's surfacing very rough and abrasive, even more so than the AC Plus or AC Plus V2 surfaces. As such, we do recommend using arm sleeves with any of the Zero series pads for the best experience, and we'll talk more about the pad's arm sleeve compatibility later in this video. Also, while we're on the topic of surfacing, all versions of the AC Zero have the same balanced controlled performance profile, even the custom print versions, so unlike some of our other pad series which can have differences between their performance profiles depending on whether the surface has been printed or not, all versions of the Zero, either standard or custom, will have the same balanced controlled performance profile. For softness, the AC0 series, just like the ACA series, only comes in one softness type, being best described as having a soft firmness to it. This softness is similar to the soft bases we've seen on the AC Pro and Heavy B and AC Plus series pads, but it's firmer than the plushier bases found on the AC Plus V2 and Ace series pads. But despite its slightly firmer nature, the Zero soft base gives the pads a decent degree of control variability, as it allows you to press your mouse into the pad to further increase its frictions, adding even more control to your movements across the Zero surface, and we'll talk about the effects of this range of control variability in a moment. Now for performance profile, the Zero series pads, as mentioned earlier, are on the more controlled side of the spectrum due to their unique surfacing and in combination with their softer base. This gives all types of the Zeros a balanced controlled performance profile, but one that leans more towards the control side than the balance side, unlike many of our other more control-oriented pads. A great example of this is how the Zero compares to the new Aqua Control A series pads, which on paper should be very similar. However, as you can see, the Zero not only has better overall control, but also a slower glide and better flicking consistency. When compared to the AC Pro Neon series pads with the extra soft and soft bases, the Zero is similar in some aspects, but again, the Zero has a higher overall control ranking as well as superior glide accuracy and flicking consistency, as the Zero's surface is much more controlled than the heat-treated Neon surfacing. Compared to the AC Pro Black series pads with the extra soft and soft bases, the Zero is surprisingly similar to both types in some aspects, but again, the Zero series has a higher overall control rating as well as a superior glide accuracy and flicking consistency, though the difference between them isn't as significant as was when you compared the Zero against the AC Pro Neon series. Compared to the standard Heavy B series pads with the extra soft and soft bases, the Heavy Bs are most similar to the Zero in many aspects, particularly the extra soft base version. However, the Zero still has slightly higher control rating as well as a slim margin of superiority in terms of glide speed, but it's important to note that the Heavy B series pads use a totally different surfacing, which, while being smoother than the surfacing here on the Zero, has a number of unique quirks about it. So keep in mind as well, on paper these pads seem very similar, in reality these pads feel quite different. Now, due to the Zero's more control optimized nature, as mentioned earlier, it makes this series ideal for static and flicking heavy aim styles, which is ideal for low time to kill games such as Counter-Strike, Valorant, and Rainbow Six Siege, as the more controlled higher friction surface weaving makes this type of aiming very consistent here on the Zero, especially when coupled with the soft base, which you can utilize by pushing your mouse into the pad to drastically increase the pad's friction, further improving the Zero's static and flicking performance. But just like many of X-Raypad's other more controlled mouse pads, the Zero can also be used for more dynamic and tracking aiming in higher time to kill games that rely on very precision focused aiming, such as the aim type required for Ashe, Widow, and Cassidy in Overwatch 2, or similar aim types in games like Fortnite, Marvel Rivals, Apex, Battlefield, and Call of Duty. So while the Zero is flexible in some use cases, keep in mind that this pad is very control focused, and it might be too slow for some aiming game types depending on your sensitivity. But despite this, keep in mind that you can further optimize the Zero series pads for a particular game or aim types by combining them with either our Jade or Obsidian series skates. So if you want to further optimize your pad for higher time to kill games by making it faster and giving it a slightly smoother glide, you can use the Zero with our Jade, Jade Air, or Jade Ultra series skates, or alternatively, if you want to make the Zero even more optimized for low time to kill games, making it even more controlled and increasing its braking frictions, you can use your Obsidian, Obsidian Air, or Obsidian Ultra series skates, but due to the Zero's rougher surfacing, we do recommend using specific types of the Obsidian and Jade series skates, and we'll talk about what types of these skates work best on the Zero in a moment. For bases, the Zero series pads use a very unique base type that's exclusive to the Zero series, which is actually one of the better performing bases available in our various pad lineups. This unique base is called the Honeycomb Double Rubber Anti-Skid base, which, unlike our previous bases, has a cell-like design to it with islands of sticky rubber running across it, giving the base a somewhat porous look to it, but despite its unique appearance, this base type performs very well, effortlessly anchoring the Zero series to most desktop surfaces, preventing the pad from shifting during use, even with your whole arm resting against it. For skate compatibility, the Zero series pads, due to their softer base type, is only compatible with some skate shapes, just as we've seen with other X-Raypad mouse pads with softer or extra soft bases. But before we talk about compatible shapes, we wanted to mention that the Zero series pads are compatible with PTFE, hardened PTFE, glass, and ceramic skates. However, due to the unique surfacing, with its strong abrasiveness to it, some harder material skates might feel rougher than expected here on the Zero. Now, for compatible shaping, due to the soft base, the Zero series is only compatible with larger surface area skates, such as most mice's stock skates, both 9.5 and 8mm donut skates, and 8mm dot skates. skates. Any skates that are smaller than that will most likely bottom out on the Zero's softer base, causing your mouse to bottom out, making most types of dot skates incompatible here with the Zero series. Also keep in mind that some mice's stock skates, if they have a very small surface area, will be incompatible with the Zero's base, as they'll have too small of a surface area to counteract the Zero's soft base, resulting in the skates bottoming out when pressure is applied to them. So keep this in mind if you plan on pairing the Zero with any of our Jade or Obsidian series skates, and be sure to get types that are compatible with the Zero series base. And as we mentioned earlier, some harder material skates such as ceramic or glass might feel very rough on the Zero. As such, while those skate types are compatible, we do recommend using softer material skates such as PTFE or hardened PTFE, specifically versions with cushioning layers such as our Air or Ultra series skates, as these cushioning layers help to reduce the amount of roughness you'll feel from the Zero's surface. For edge stitching, the Zero series use a rounded 4mm tall edge stitching which sits roughly even with the Zero's surface. Just as we've seen with other rounded edge stitchings X-Raypad has used on their other pads, the rounded nature of the edge stitching here on the Zero makes it smooth to the touch, much smoother than the surface of the Zero, making a much lower friction, so moving your arm across or up or down the pad's edge stitching doesn't add any significant drag to your movements. And also it's worth noting that if you get the custom print version of the AC0, you can customize the color of the edge stitching. As of recording this video, you can choose between black, white, and clear threading to accent the custom printing. In terms of the effects of moisture, since the Zero is in the Aqua Control series and uses non-coated Amundsen fabric for its surface weaving, just like all the other pads in the AC series, the Zero surface is highly resistant to moisture. So not only will sweat from your arms or hands have a minimal impact on the pad's performance, it will also be highly resistant to humidity. And if for whatever reason moisture does make contact with the pad's surface, it will slowly drain through the surface into the pad, further preventing any moisture from affecting the pad's performance. However, to be clear, if the pad gets waterlogged it will slow down, as all pads will, but in most environments, moisture from humidity or your hands or arms will not affect the Zero series pad's performance in any significant way. And on the topic of the effects of moisture, let's also talk about the effects of dust and debris, as just like all other versions of the AC pads, the Zero series is largely immune to larger debris types such as crumbs or pet fur due to the tight surface stitching. However, smaller debris particles such as dust along with dead skin, sweat, and oils from your hands and arms can affect the pad surfacing over very long-term use, as they'll fill the gaps in the surface's weaving. Now this may cause the lighter colored areas on a Zero pad to discolor or yellow slightly, but this will only happen over very long-term use, and you could prevent this by spot cleaning the pad surface periodically to prevent any performance issues or discoloration, and we'll talk about how to clean and maintain the pad in a moment. Now for arm sleeve compatibility, unlike the other pads in the Aqua Control series, due to the Zero's rougher, higher friction surfacing, this pad is only compatible with gaming optimized sleeves, as their material blend and surfacing allows them to glide smoothly over the Zero's rougher surface. However, athletic sleeves or any type of sleeve that has a textured surface or is very soft will feel very slow here on the Zero to a borderline unusable degree, as the texturing will grip the pad's rough surfacing, making movements very high friction. As such, if you want to get an arm sleeve for the Zero, we recommend getting a gaming optimized one that has a smooth surface and a proper material blend, so if you plan on using a sleeve with your Zero, make sure you get one that is compatible. Alright, and lastly for care and cleaning instructions, if you notice your pad surface becoming dirty or discoloring, we recommend spot cleaning the pad with a wet wipe. If you need to deep clean your pad, you can do so using a shower head set to low pressure and lukewarm or cold water, and you can also clean the pad's base using this method, but keep in mind that fully soaking the pad surface will slightly alter the surface's feel, and also be sure not to use hot water, soap, or any kind of cleaning chemicals on the pad as it can damage the surfacing. But regardless of how you clean the pad surface, ensure that you always let the pad air dry and never use an iron or a hair dryer, as they can damage the Zero surface. And for transporting and storing the Zero series of pads, as mentioned earlier, since you cannot reverse roll the pad, it's very important that you roll the pad with the base facing inward and the surface outward, and we also recommend holding onto the Zero's packaging, as you can reuse it to safely transport or store the pad if needed. Alright, and with that, that's everything you need to know about the Aqua Control Zero series mousepads. If you've been looking for a mousepad with a balanced controlled performance profile, but one that leans more towards the control end of the spectrum and is very well suited for low time to kill games like Counter-Strike, Valorant, and Rainbow Six Siege, the Aqua Control Zero is a perfect pickup. Just keep in mind that the Zero has a very unique surface that is much more abrasive than our other mousepad offerings, so we highly recommend using an arm sleeve with the Zero series, especially if you have sensitive skin. If this is a concern for you and you prefer not to use a sleeve, we recommend checking out the AC Ace, AC Pro, or Heavy B series pads as an alternative to the Zero, as they'll have less abrasive surfacings and similar performance profiles, just not as controlled. But if you'd like to learn learn more about the AC0 series of pads or pick one up for yourself, you can check out the pads product pages down in the video description, and we'll also have a breakdown videos for the AC Ace, AC Pro, and Heavy B series pads listed down there for you as well. And don't forget, if you pick up the AC0 or anything else from X-Raypad's website, make sure to use code BREAKDOWN to save yourself a little bit more off your order if applicable. And as always, if you have any specific questions about the Aqua Control Zero series pads that we did not cover in this video, feel free to leave your question down in the comments and we'll do our best to answer any questions you may have. But that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching and thank you for choosing X-Raypad. Cheers.